Welcome to the next episode of Discipline, Desire, Dedication. My name is Dakota Lang, along co-host Garrett Cotten. Today we're going to talk about why people get in sales and also why they get out. So
Mhm.
there's obviously a lot of different factors that go into that, and we're just going to give our perspective on it. And
Mhm.
that's something that we experience all the time. Being a part of the biggest window door-to-door company in the world. And then yeah, let's talk about
Yeah, I
it.
guess we can kind of start off just kind of going into like what got us into sales.
Yeah.
For me personally, I wasn't looking for a sales job. It was almost like kind of like basic training. Like I didn't have anywhere else to go. That's literally why I joined the Army National Guard. I went to college. College didn't work out, and then whenever I withdrew from college, it was kind of like, all right, what next? And we're like, all right, there's the Army National Guard. Get tuition exemption. And then same thing here for me. I'd went and worked with my mom's company for about 4 months and then went back to serving tables. And yeah, going from serving tables, I started praying for an opportunity. And I didn't know that it was going to be sales, but then sales landed in my lap and I fell in love with every aspect of it. But well, yeah, you're kind of a similar situation. You weren't looking for it. Oh, I guess you were in real estate.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to kind of piggyback on. I mean,
Yeah.
even as a bartender or a
Hmm.
server, like you're still technically into sales. Like we always refer it back to like being a part of the people business. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
It's kind of I consider bartending, it's a little bit more customer service than sales.
Yeah,
But the thing is like at bartending, unless you're in the right setting, very few restaurants are going to train you to increase sales, right? Like most places that I've worked, it's just like, hey, look, here's the menu. They ask you for something, go get it. As far as like learning to increase table like ticket size and stuff like that, that's something that really truly as a server, you got to learn your own on your own.
yeah. Well, I want to kind of go through that because I mean, I did work at United Reynolds. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And I went through their sales development program,
Yeah.
and we're going to tie this in with door to door sales, but even like yeah, that's a sales job, but it's kind of similar to like what you're talking about with the serving or a bartending, the customer service industry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's kind of like, hey, I have a menu. This is the price. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Um, it's kind of a complex scenario, but I would say like, why did I get into sales? So the reason that I got into sales, so I was a sales inside sales rep with United Reynolds.
Mhm.
Um, and the thing about that is yeah, you can get a little bit of commission, but you're not outside, actually hustling the
It's mainly
commission.
salaried, right?
Yeah, mainly salary, but you can go out there and you might get one here and there from people coming in, but it's not like you're making your money on commission,
Yeah.
you know. And that was whenever I went into real estate, and the reason my thought process, and we're actually a part of this book right now called Built Different,
Mhm.
and it's in that chapter that I'm writing. And the thing is that I was always chasing um, that uncapped income.
Yeah.
And sales is what can provide you with that if you're with the right company.
Yeah.
You know, having that uncapped income just because, how much ever money you want to make is, you can just go out there and make it happen.
Yeah.
So,
And door to door, I always say that you'll never talk to every person. You'll never knock every door. Like as far as opportunity goes, it's just as much as you're willing to go take.
yeah, and it's only getting bigger.
Yeah.
I mean, houses are getting built every single day.
Mhm.
And that's the best part of being like in a home remodel industry with just with windows.
When did you realize that like so at United Rental, when did you realize there was a ceiling, Was it whenever you kind of started to realize like it's mainly salary or what would you say?
Yeah, well, I would say that whenever I went through the sales development program, the thing was I went through the sales development program because I wanted to be an outside sales rep.
Mhm.
Once I was going through that program, it made me realize that even whenever you do come out of the program, you're talking about you're going to get a little salary, and then you're going to have already pre-existing accounts that you're going to be able to get commission from,
Yeah.
and then you get paid on new business as well that you
Mhm.
go generate.
Yeah.
But the thing is that you go in that, and starting out of the program, you're going to make 80,000, 100,000.
Yep.
You know,
And you're just
uh,
managing accounts, really.
managing it. You're an account manager
Yeah.
essentially. Yes.
Yeah.
Rather than out here generating leads
New
constantly. Yeah,
sales.
new sales.
Yep.
Um, and that was kind of whenever. whenever I heard stories of other people that were in the program with me that were getting out, taking the, accepting job positions,
Uh-huh.
and finding out what they were making, what they were getting offered,
Yeah.
it made me realize like that's almost just like a title.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's just a title that they put
Mhm.
on just to make people feel good.
Yep.
When in reality, I don't think that that's truly selling.
Yeah. It's really not, it's the same thing even in hospice because I worked in hospice for 4 months, and my title was like I wanna say it was an account executive, but same type of thing is you walk in and I've got these certain hospitals who we already have relationships with, and I just go and continue to hold that relationship, so it really wasn't teaching me any new sales tactics or, anything more about sales. It was mainly just it was a title holding a position, of keeping a client happy.
Right. But look, and why do we get in? Why did I get into sales? Why did you get into sales? And one of the things that I preach is because I was always chasing that uncapped potential.
Mhm.
And sales is something that can offer you. But through our experiences with other people that we have brought into sales, what is a common trait that you see of people? Necessarily, they might not even be looking to get into sales because a lot of people, we go through it all the time. You ask them, do you have sales experience? They're like, no, I
Yeah.
do this, that, blah, blah, blah. And, but what are some common traits that you see on why people make the jump into sales?
Yeah. The only thing I can really think of is a lot of people are, you know, backs against the walls, needing quick money, needing to change their financial situation. Like it's people who, a lot of our people from in our company are from Indeed. Well, who are the people that are going to Indeed? People that are needing a job, people that are needing some sort of opportunity. I'm sure a lot of people in our company applied for multiple jobs, and then just so happened this is the one that worked out. Even the guy that recruited me into the company, he applied through Indeed, but he applied for this place and a car dealership. So two sales jobs. So I think about like his mindset. It's just about high income, short period of time. Like what's my fastest money I can make to change my current financial situation. So I think that's why a lot of people get into sales is because the opportunity. It's kind of like walking into a casino. You can walk into a sales company and within 5 to 6 months, you could be making life changing money. But at the same time, if you don't go in there and, play the games right, or you just half ass play them, you don't really learn the games, then you'll walk out losing a lot of money, you
Yeah.
know?
And one common trend that I always see, I was actually on Facebook yesterday. I commented on a guy's post. I don't know who he was. He was from Louisiana. Obviously, it popped on my feed. And he was like, been in the plants. I'm tired of working turnarounds. You know what I mean? Just looking for something else,
Yeah. I think that's everybody gets tired of that mundane too. You know?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, and it's not just the plants, it's any other job, but, they get into this repetition of their 9 to 5 or they're working turnarounds, leaving their family, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have the perception that sales is not, it was definitely not as much physical labor,
Mhm.
but a lot of people think that you don't have to work as hard. And I think that's a false narrative.
Yeah. Yeah. Because even like us, we advertise it as, 5 days a week, 5 hours a day. And realistically, you can have success that way. But that's not gonna be the top 1% in the sales. And if you're gonna come into sales, you wanna do it to see the full potential of the earning, because this is a super high stress industry. Working in sales, if you don't get a sale, you don't get paid.
Yeah.
So like you go through some really high highs and really low lows. So I think I agree with you. People coming to get out of that 9 to 5, that mundane, breaking up that cycle, which is kind of a funny topic because humans are, I mean, we're creatures of habit, so routine is good. Like I think we thrive our best when we have routine. But as far as our work setting and stuff, we want that to change.
Right.
We want promotion.
Yeah, I agree. What are your thoughts on like why do you feel like when people do get into sales, after a period of time, they eventually get out?
Um, The stress is a huge one. The balance. Balance is probably the biggest reason that people get out of sales, is because they come into this and they expect that, oh, I can make the money and I can also be the best person in my relationship. and they think, oh, I can make the money and I can still travel the world. I can make the money and I can, but realistically, people try to balance in order to be good at sales and like to be in the 1%, there is no balance. It is an obsession, right? In order to be like a good father and stuff, like the thing is like you just got to be the best version when you're there. But in order to build your business and be good at sales, it takes an obsession with the sales aspect. So to answer your question, I feel like it's when people try to balance the luxuries of life, like the family, the travel, the experiences with the sales life, that's when it crumbles. So
Yeah.
what do you think?
Well, yeah, I think that well, I got two different answers. For new people that come in and then they don't make it long, I think they don't realize the work ethic that it takes to be a good salesman. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? They're comparing it to a 9 to 5 job or somewhere where they can show up and just go through motions and get result or get paid.
Yeah.
When in sales, you cannot do that.
And even here, clocking in and clocking out, like we do a freaking podcast to talk about it, because we have to talk about it 24/7. Like there's no like, oh, well, clock in, clock out. Like this, it's a lifestyle, and I think that's where people miss it.
Yep, it's a lifestyle, and that's exactly what I was going to get to. Is that some people get in, they think it's just that you can, treat it like we always say, treat it like a job, it's going to pay you like a job, you
Absolutely.
know. But if you come in and you take sales and you take, like you said, extreme ownership and uh, be obsessed with it,
Hmm.
right? This is a sales is a lifestyle,
Yeah.
and that goes back to when you see you've heard it, just throughout life is like, man, that dude would be a good salesman. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? And I believe that whenever people are able to adapt to the lifestyle of the work ethic that we're able to put in to be able to get the results that we do,
Yeah.
that's whenever you can really elevate.
It's like treating it like I use the analogy all the time of professional sports. Like a professional sport, like in sales, we're the professional salesman, right? We are the NFL of sales.
Yeah, door to
Whereas
door.
whereas like if you go to United Rentals where you're salaried with a little commission, you're like the high school version of sales. Like, but when you're 100% commission based, that's like the truest form of sales there is. And we're good at it, right? So it comes back to like the mindset. Do you think Tiger Woods had a balance of life whenever he was winning those green jackets? Right. Same thing. In order to be the 1% in sales, it's that obsession. You think about Tom Brady. Did Tom Brady balance life out along with playing football? Heck no, there's no balance at all. And that comes back to like what we do. The people who are successful in sales are the people who make it their lifestyle. Like Tom Brady, his life is football, right?
Right.
He's even retired from the bait, it's still football. Like we do a podcast, we still do sales. Even when we're not selling, we're still talking sales. It's obsession,
Yeah,
right?
obsession with the craft and everything.
Hmm.
Um, what do you think is some of the? Let me think here. 'Cause I definitely want to stay on topic
Yeah.
of why do people get into
Well, let's
sales?
kind of go through each one of the positions. Entry level position where it's like, people are newer to this industry, newer to the industry of sales. What do you think so getting into it is just changing their financial situation or, getting out of the
Definitely changing
mundane?
your financial situation. But I also believe that, like you were saying, door to door sales is the professional of sales, period. Um, but I also think that because I preach to people like, yeah, you're going to make a lot of money. You're going to change your financial situation faster than you can at any other job just because of the uncapped commission.
Hmm.
But also, I hear people coming through Indeed because you hear all different types of stories.
Hmm.
And one thing that I see is that you know some people they do, especially with media now. You're able to do all kinds of research, and sales is such a personal development skill.
Yeah.
You know, and we have people come in and they're just like, oh, I just want to be able to communicate better.
Yeah, I have had people like that. That is true. Like people with speech impediments and people who with just bad social, awareness. Those types of people come into the room and I've hired them because they're like, yeah, do you remember Josiah?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, he came in and I think he went to go do like wholesale real estate or something like that, but he came in to get better at communicating with people, better at talking. So that's another reason that people could be coming into the doors. But I mean, why do these people quit though? You know, why do they end up leaving the space? Because even like that Josiah guy, he came in, made some sales, had a couple big sales with you as well, and then ended up leaving the industry. But on that topic, I think that he ended up leaving because he wasn't seeing enough consistency in the sales. You know, it's hard to do this long term if you don't have the income coming.
Yeah, it's hard to do it long term, but I also think that the reason that people in that situation that leave sales is because they don't, like I said, they don't realize the lifestyle, especially door to door sales, you know.
Hmm.
It goes back to, like you're talking about, Tiger Woods, Tom Brady, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James. You know, those people are the top one percenters in their industry is because they're obsessed.
Yeah.
You know, the second that you just treat sales like a job that you clock in and clock out, it honestly is going to become miserable for you.
Yeah,
You know,
it's actually, I think that's why it's sometimes harder for people who, you know, who have came from being in different industries for 20 years. You know, it's an extreme, you have to completely reach, like develop your brain to understand that it's a lifestyle rather than that clock in, clock out. But even on that same topic of like 18-year-olds, you know, you got these young guys. I think about like Jesse Abeda, such a stud when he came in. But on the weekends and at nighttime, he was partying, he was drinking, he was being 18-year-old. You know, you can't blame the kid. But in the room, he did everything right. 100% on script, swaggy, good smile, good looking. Like he did it. But because it wasn't his lifestyle, it was his job. That's why he ended up fizzling out of the company as well.
right? Let's elaborate on that a little bit, just because of like when people do come into sales, like
We could probably help with people, our listeners, like market owners and stuff like that, retaining people. When you see that your people are starting to, they're doing everything right. They're on script. They're hitting their combos. They're doing all the above. Like, what's a way to retain these people longer in sales? You know, maybe it'd be having that conversation of like, what are they doing outside of work?
yeah,
Mhm.
100%. What are you doing outside of work? Is this truly your lifestyle or is this your job?
Yeah.
You know, and if you treat it like, let's dive into that on how to treat it like a lifestyle.
Hmm. Okay. Well, for one, whenever we came to do well, I'll do the a comparison. When I was in Louisiana, bartending and working those normal jobs, I went out every night. I drank with every occasion. If I'm playing golf, I'm drinking. Playing basketball, I'm drinking. If we're sitting on the porch, we're drinking. like you name it, we're drinking. Um, it was just a one day at a time lifestyle. Whereas whenever I came into door to door sales, it's like wake up at 5 a.m., work out at 6 a.m. I'm on routine to hold myself, to callous my mind to become a stronger person, reading the Bible more, going to church more, becoming a better person. It comes down to that personal development. I always say it's almost biblical, because the Bible says to live in the image of God, and then it talks about like a good person obtaineth favor from the Lord. So if you are a good person, you treat your body well rather than pouring alcohol down our bodies every single day, things like that, then you're going to start seeing more reward and fruition in your life. So it's that personal development is like that, the big point.
Right. Yeah, I agree 100%. I think that that's one of the biggest keys in the difference of people that stay in sales and the people that don't,
Mhm.
because they're not focused on the development of themselves to be able to elevate in the industry. Because once you come into sales and you get stagnant, then you're just gonna quit.
What's your perspective on like people who come into this type of industry and they want it, but they've got someone in their home life who holds them back. Like a spouse or a parent or a brother, or somebody in your life that's like, "Why are you doing that?" What do you, how would you give our listeners advice to handle somebody who wants to be good in sales, but they're in a bad setting outside of work?
Yeah, well, I'll say that I'm gonna revert it back to getting like making the jump into sales
Hmm.
whenever you have somebody in your corner going, why are you going to leave this, guaranteed income to go into sales and do that? The biggest thing is that, just like I was talking to a guy the other day, it's like, dude, I don't have to sell you on the opportunity that I have.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it just depends on if you have the same vision that I have.
Yep.
If you don't have the same vision that I have, then this ain't going to be for you.
No.
You know what I mean? And that's okay.
Hmm.
So people that have never been in sales cannot relate to somebody who has, and I think that's very crucial because I think you have people like spouses, family members, friends, acquaintances, whatever, people that you talk to that might be telling you, oh, you don't want to do that, you got a good job here, but it
What would
all.
you tell that rep?
What would I tell the rep? What's your vision?
Yeah.
Where are you going?
Yeah.
What are you trying to accomplish?
Mhm.
Because if you're trying to accomplish a balanced lifestyle,
Mm.
then sales is not what you're looking for. Because,
Yep.
yeah, I think it's funny because people, they think me and you ain't family men, and I'm like, are
Yeah.
you kidding me? Yeah, I'm definitely a good family guy.
Mm.
But at the same time, like I'm 100% obsessed with my career, and I know where I'm going, and I
Yep.
know what it's going to take for me to get there.
Mhm.
So when you have people that are, in your corner telling you, I don't know if you want to do that, the question that you got to ask yourself is, what is my vision? Where am I trying to go?
Mm.
Because sales is not for everybody, but it is for everyone at the same time.
Yeah, anybody can do
Anybody
it.
can do it.
I've learned that is I've seen people walk in the room where everybody around me is like, "Why'd you hire that person?" And I'm like, "It's my job to give them a chance." It's testing my abilities as a leader and as a coach. What can I do to add value to that person and change their financial situation?
Yep.
So that's a good way to look at it too. But let's kind of go progress through like closer and market owner. Once you get in leadership positions, what would you say? I mean, really and truly, I don't know many people who quit the job and go to a different industry.
There's I'm not gonna name drop, but um I mean, there was a guy that worked in Phoenix that he was a Golden Door winner, came on company trips with us, and
Oh,
then went and sold insurance.
yeah, that is true.
You
But
know,
it still stayed in a high ticket sales.
Still stayed in a high ticket sales. But there's also one that was with us from day one that completely got out of it,
Yeah,
and now he's in the restaurant business.
that is true.
You
Yeah,
know,
but he got the closer and never got to a true. I mean, he was a leader in the room, but not a market owner.
right?
So we never gave him that
No,
full.
he was a closer,
Yeah, but not a market owner.
not a market owner, but even as a closer,
Yeah, still a leader.
still a leader in the room.
What do you think? Let's dive into that without name drop or anything like that. What do you think the reason? Because he was in your office. What do you
Yep.
think the reason is that he decided to go back to his old life?
Vision.
Yeah.
Vision.
Mhm.
That's what I'm telling you. If you don't have the vision of uncapped potential, sacrifice. If you're living, and I don't mean to say this in the wrong way, but I always say that the middle class lives for the weekend.
Yeah.
If you're living for the weekend, then you're not gonna be a one percenter. You're
Mm-mm.
not gonna. You're not gonna, because Saturdays are for the salesman. We preach that in our
And
company.
if you're in a bad headspace on Saturday, you won't make it.
You know what I mean? So it just depends on your vision. And I think that people, when they get a taste of the money, they come in, they're hungry, they're broke. That's why they came in, to make that money. And then after they start making changing their finances, right? They lose track of the vision, or they don't think big enough.
Yeah. Even in the situation in Seattle, we just had somebody leave the office. And the video that I showed you, I got too much money. It was a situation where he got too big headed and then, lost the situation.
Lose
But
vision.
you lose vision because it was no longer the vision of market owner. It was like, hey, I'm on top of the world.
Yep.
I got a girlfriend. Yeah, no.
And that's why it's challenging. The more money you make, the more challenging it is to humble yourself, you know?
And one thing that I think is really, really big for our listeners, and that's helped me to get to the position that we're in, is short-term goals. Like for me, the 60-day sacrifice. If you give yourself 60 days at a time, even when I've talked to my market owners, I'm like, dude, if you can just give in 180 days, or like I'm trying to give them just a short term of everything you got for 2 months or 6 months. And then you lift your head up and you're going to be at the next position. So I always tell people, I'm trying to get them. It's so much easier to be reminded of your vision when you set short-term goals. Whereas if you start a job and you're like, hey, I'm going to be the owner of this company, how you going to get there? 60 days at a time, 60 days to get qualified, then consecutive 60 days of being on leaderboards, and then being a market owner 60 days at a time, you're just constant run-ups of $1 million markets. So, I think that's how you maintain growth, the short-term goals,
Mhm.
and stay in the company or stay in the industry, because when it's a short-term goal, even if you don't hit it, it's day one. You know, you have a new goal, a new vision to build. So I think that'd be really beneficial for listeners is if you're on the fence about things, just reset goals. Even it comes back to us. We used to say, I need another recruit. And when I get a recruit, it resets everything. I got to reset to personal development. I got to reset to waking up on time. I got to reset to studying the scripts again. You know, it's like that's our way of staying motivated in this industry.
Yep. I think that's super important. The biggest thing that I want to wrap it up on is just like people come in to sales because they're majority of the time trying to learn a skill, communication skill, change their financial state. But as you grow into sales and you start seeing the money that you can make, don't ever lose sight of the vision.
Mm-hmm.
If you lose sight of the vision, that's why you're going to end up getting out, is because you're not chasing anything anymore, right? So always check yourself. Remember where you came from, and that'll always remind you why you are where you are. So.
Yeah.
But you got any last words?
Yeah, just on the topic. So one of my one-liners that I always say about like goal setting, because right now I was just saying that 60 days, set a goal for 60 days. If it doesn't touch pen to paper, then you're just living a dream, and dreams rarely come true. So, but if you want things to come true and you want to, be 1% or you want to make it in sales, have constant goal accountability with yourself, So
Yep,
that's my
100%. Well, we appreciate all of you watching. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel, as well as follow us on all of our other platforms. And we'll catch you guys next time. Peace out.